Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to discuss what to expect during week 5 of starting your own summer garden plants from seed. Let's get going. So week 5 is going to be a busy week, probably the busiest week that we've had so far. So let's review a few of the things that we need to be checking on regularly for our already established plants. The most important thing right now is going to be your watering regimen and making sure that you are on top of your watering game. Now here in zone 7B, the temperatures are starting to get into the mid 70s, and here in the greenhouse, it's going to put that right at 100 degrees routinely. And what that's going to mean is we're going to need to pay extra special attention to how much water our plants have in the medium that they're growing in. So you may need to start watering once a day, and if you're getting hotter than us, you may be required to do so twice a day. So when in doubt, just water them. A lot of times right now, we don't have to worry so much about the damping disease. And the reason for that, of course, is because it's so warm. We're getting so much direct sunlight. Damping disease usually happens whenever there's, like shaded or mottled sunlight and the temperatures are cool. So overwatering, as long as your plants can drain well, you shouldn't have to worry about, overwatering too terribly much. Now, another thing that we need to make sure that we're doing routinely at this point of our summer garden plants that we've started already is we need to make sure that we're on a routine schedule for our fertilizers. Now, again, we do ours every 2 weeks. I have it on a calendar, and I just try to get all of my plants on the same routine. It doesn't always work out that way, but as of right now, all of our plants that we have established are on the same fertilizing routine. I would also like to recommend, if you, like us, use the fish emulsion, that you take these guys out of your greenhouse or out of your house, whatever you do it, and once you're finished fertilizing, maybe give them a small cursory watering with fresh, clean water to make sure that that fish emulsion gets settled into the soil. The second thing that I'd like to address today is we need to start looking to move our cold weather vegetables out into the garden. Now, I know we started all of our summer plants, and these are going to be in our summer garden. But many of these plants, like the dill and the kale, they can go ahead and go into the ground. Anything that can survive a light frost, it's a good time to go ahead and put them in now that we're approaching April. We shouldn't have any risk of a heavy freeze, but a light frost is still there. So we want to make sure we keep things that are susceptible to dying in a frost, peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, that sort of thing. Keep those in the greenhouse for now. But if you're like us growing kale, chard, dill, that sort of things, as soon as they're ready, they need to be moved from your greenhouse and into their permanent spot in your summer garden. And there are two primary reasons for that, and I'm going to show you the first right now. This is our dill plant, and you can see I haven't moved these out there because I wanted to show them. We're real big on showing our successes and, more importantly, our failures here at the homestead. So this dill, what happened was, dill is a cool weather plant. It can handle a light frost, but you don't start growing it and you want to grow it in your summer garden, if that makes sense. So what happened was, now that it's getting routinely around 70, 75 degrees here in 7B, the greenhouse, like I said, gets triple digits, and dill does not like that at all. So you can see we fried several of our dill plants. Luckily, the vast majority of them made them, and that's why I started 24 plants to start with, is dill can be a little fickle. We also did that with our kale. This is called dinosaur kale. It's just got a weird shape to the leaves. But if you can see these leaves right here, that triple digits did a number on these guys. Kale, just like dill, can take a substantial frost, not a hard freeze, and be just fine. So most of these we've already moved into their permanent place in our summer garden beds. But again, I wanted to show everybody what happens if you're not diligent and opening the greenhouse up. What ended up happening was I was away from the house whenever the sun came up. I didn't realize it was going to get that warm, It was only 71 degrees outside, but in the greenhouse, it was 102. And you can kind of see the result of me neglecting my plants for that day. And the second reason that it's time to start moving any plants that we can into their permanent garden spot is because we're going to need some room for our next round of plants. And that brings us to the third topic for today. And that is, it is time to start preparing our melons, our cucumbers, and the squashes to go into the ground. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole routine of how to set up your seed trays and plant and that kind of stuff. What I'll do is I'll just put a little tag right up here that'll take you to week 1. It's exactly the same way, of course, minus the fact you don't have to do the half filling for your tomatoes. Just fill your squashes and stuff the same way that we did for all the rest of our plants, and you should be good to go. One thing I want to caution you about this is, with your squashes and melons and that sort of stuff, it is really important that you have enough room for them. And I do not start my squashes, melons, and these type of things. I'll use these for my cucumbers, but I'll use something more akin to this whenever I start my squash, my melons, just the squash and the melons. I'll use the bigger one like this. And the reason for that is their roots are not a huge fan of being disturbed too much. So, whenever you're removing plants from a tray like this, the 6 of them, you're going to be disturbing the neighbors when you're removing one plant. If you have a single cell like this, it's much easier to go ahead and pull the plant out without doing too much damage to the root system. Another thing that I wanted to point out about getting time to do your squashes and melons and such is I highly recommend taking this opportunity when you're going through and doing your fertilizing regimen. On those same weeks, I would start putting a half-strength liquid fertilizer in the places that these plants and your melons and squashes and stuff in their permanent homes. We want to go ahead and start kickstarting all of those microbes in the soil. And when we put fertilizer, especially if it's an organic fertilizer, essentially what you're doing is you're feeding the microbes in that soil. And if we start that now, it's going to really benefit us whenever it starts getting hot right around the 1st of July. So we'll wrap it up here at the end with just a little bit of advice. When we're starting our new plants, I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that the original soil that you start with is going to be damp, if not soaked. Again, the reason for that is the high temperatures, right? You want to make sure that you give them as much buffer as you possibly can when it comes to the moisture, because, truthfully, these are small areas, and whenever you're dealing with small areas and heavy heat, the water can evaporate and it can be devastating, as we showed earlier. Another thing that I wanted to point out is, if you have not taken the time to plan how many and where your plants are going to go, I highly recommend that you get that taken care of over the next couple weeks. At least here in Zone 7B, we're about 3 to 4 weeks from putting all these bad boys in the ground. You're also going to start noticing, with the increase in the temperatures, that your peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, ground cherries, all of those nightshades that love the heat, they're going to start growing exponentially relatively to what they were up to this point. So getting a lot of those other plants out and into the ground is really going to pay off. As always, I appreciate everyone who stuck it out with us here till the end. I hope everyone takes care of themselves. Peace.